When I saw her, my heart raced. Not because she was dressed in anything extravagant, quite the opposite. Her jeans were worn, boots dusty, and the sleeves of her faded shirt were rolled up to her elbows, exposing arms tanned by the sun and hardened by work. Her hair was tied back in a messy braid that still somehow managed to look perfect. She held a bucket in one hand, a calm stare in the other, and her face wasn't made to impress. It was made to stay. She didn't see me at first. I had just arrived that morning, unannounced, as agreed with the local agency that helped me purchase the land. They knew not to reveal who I was. That was the point. I didn't want VIP treatment. I didn't want polished lies. I wanted to see the truth of the world I had bought my way into. And she was that truth. They told me she had been taking care of the farm for the past 2 years, ever since her grandfather passed away. They also told me she had no idea that the land was being sold behind her back by a distant uncle who needed the money and didn't care about roots. I didn't have the heart to show up in a suit with papers in hand, so I came as a stranger, just another outsider looking for work. "Need help with that?" I asked. She turned around slowly. Her eyes narrowed as they scanned me, head to toe. Not with flirtation, with caution. Trust in her world. Wasn't something handed out. "You're the new worker?" she asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "I guess so," I said, trying to smile. "Grab the other bucket. The calves need feeding." And just like that, I was in. No introductions, no questions. Just work. Real, raw, honest work. Her name was Clara, 20 years old, and in that first hour of silence between us, something in me cracked. I had built empires, owned jets, bought entire companies over breakfast. I had tasted every pleasure the world could offer, and none of it prepared me for the feeling of walking beside her in that field. Clara didn't speak unless necessary. She moved with intention, like someone who had no time to waste on pretense. But when she did look at me, truly look, I felt like she could see everything I was trying to hide. That night I sat in the small guest room behind the barn, staring at the cracked ceiling. No penthouse, no silk sheets, just silence. And it felt more like home than anything I had known in years. I thought about telling her the truth, that I wasn't a simple worker, that I was the one who now owned every inch of that soil she was trying to protect. But every time I saw her brush the mane of a horse with reverence or whisper to the cows like they were family, I knew I couldn't. Not yet. She believed the farm was still hers. That hope lit her eyes every morning. And I wasn't ready to take that light away. Over the next few days, we fell into rhythm. Feeding animals, fixing fences, talking about weather and chores. Nothing personal, nothing deep. Until one afternoon, she caught me watching the sunset. "You're not from here," she said. "No," I replied. "Is it that obvious? You walk like you're used to marble floors." I laughed. "And you read people like you read the land." She didn't smile, just nodded and said, "City people always think they can buy everything. But out here, money can't teach you how to listen." I didn't say anything because I knew she was right. The silence between us became comfortable, safe. And in that silence, something unspoken grew. A connection, not through touches, not even through stories, through presence. I watched her brush her fingers through wheat. I watched her cry once, quietly when a foal was born dead. She didn't want me to see, but I did. And I didn't speak. I just stood there. She never mentioned it again. But after that, she started calling me by my name, Jack. And every time she said it, it felt like the first time someone really meant it. She didn't need to try. Clara didn't wear perfume or makeup. She didn't tilt her head when she spoke or lean in for effect. But somehow, every movement she made, every look, every pause, held a quiet power that undressed my thoughts without touching me at all. It was the way she walked through dust, like the ground recognized her. The way her hair stuck to her neck in the heat, wild and perfect. The way her lips pressed together when she was focused, and how her eyes lit up when she spoke about the land as if it had a soul. She was 20. I was almost twice that. But it wasn't her youth that unsettled me. It was her intensity. A kind of raw, untamed fire that I had only seen in people who didn't know they were being watched. That afternoon, I found her in the stables, humming softly while brushing down a horse. She didn't notice me at first. The sunlight poured through the wooden slats and painted her skin in gold. Her shirt was tied at the waist, revealing the subtle strength in her stomach. Her jeans, fitted and worn, clung like they belonged there. She turned and caught me staring. "You always stand that quietly?" I cleared my throat. "Didn't mean to startle you." "You didn't." She kept brushing, then added, "But most men flinch when I look back. I'm not most men." She smiled barely. "I've noticed." That day we talked more than usual. About music she never got to play, books she used to read with her grandfather, how the town nearby was small, boring, and full of people who talked more than they listened. "What about you?" she asked, leaning against the wooden wall. "What about me? You don't talk about your past." "Not much to tell." She didn't press, but I could feel her curiosity like a rope tightening slowly around me. I lied to her every single day, not through words but through omission. She believed the farm was still safe, that she was working to keep it alive. She didn't know that the papers had already changed hands, that I had the power to sell it tomorrow if I wanted. But I didn't want that. I wanted her, not in the way I had wanted women before, not with conquest or hunger. I wanted her gaze to stay on me, her voice to keep saying my name. I wanted to deserve the way she looked at me, like I was something real. The next evening we sat by the fence watching the sky bleed orange. She had dirt on her cheek and a torn glove on her hand, but she looked like something holy. "Why are you really here, Jack?" she asked suddenly. "What do you mean? You work harder than most, but your hands, they weren't made for this." I hesitated. "Maybe I came here to remember what real feels like." She looked at me for a long time. "You can't fake what you don't understand. And you listen better than most." There was a pause, heavy, fragile. Then she leaned closer, not enough to touch, but enough for me to feel the heat between us. "I don't trust easily," she whispered, "but something about you." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed every word, every glance, every shift in her breath. My body ached for her, but my soul ached more, because I knew this couldn't last. The truth would catch up, and when it did, I wasn't sure if I'd lose her completely, or if the fire between us would be strong enough to survive the burn. But one thing was certain. She wasn't just a girl from the farm anymore. She was the woman who made a liar out of a man who had everything, and I was already too far gone to turn back. She had no idea what she did to me. Every time she walked past me, the air shifted, not in some cliché way, but like gravity itself bent for her. There was something in the way her body moved, unaware of its power, that made it impossible to look away. She would toss a bale of hay over her shoulder and wipe sweat from her chest with the back of her hand, not caring if her shirt clung to her skin. She would stretch after a long day and expose just a glimpse of her waist, and I'd have to force myself to turn away. Not because I didn't want to look, but because I wanted it too much. She was 20, and she was fire wrapped in sunlight. I told myself I was being careful, that I was keeping a respectful distance, but inside I was burning. Every stolen glance, every accidental touch, every time she handed me something and let her fingers linger a second too long. She didn't mean to seduce me, but God, she did. And I was losing the battle to stay the man she believed I was, the man she thought I was, the man I wasn't. One night it rained hard, the kind of storm that shook the barn walls and turned the earth into thick, wet clay. She came knocking on the door of my small room, soaked and shivering. "There's a leak in the feed room," she said. "I can't patch it alone." I grabbed my jacket and followed her through the storm, flashlight in hand, heart pounding harder than the rain on the roof. The feed room was half flooded. The tarp above had collapsed, and she was already climbing up onto the stacked bags to reach it. Her shirt clung to her like a second skin. Her hair stuck to her cheeks, her breath fast and visible in the cold air. "Clara, let me—" "I got it," she said, pushing the tarp back with both hands. She slipped. I caught her, my arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her tight against my chest. Her hands grabbed my shoulders. Our faces were inches apart. Her breath hitched, so did mine. I looked into her eyes, those fierce, vulnerable, storm-colored eyes, and I swear the whole world went still. She didn't pull away, but I did, slowly, carefully, because if I kissed her, I'd never stop, and if I didn't tell her the truth before that happened, I'd hate myself even more than I already did. We stood in silence, our bodies inches apart but worlds away. She finally spoke. "Why do you look at me like that?" "Like what?" "Like I'm the last good thing you'll ever touch." I didn't answer, because she was right, and she didn't know just how true that was. The next morning, I found her in the pasture before sunrise. She didn't mention the night before. She didn't need to. But something had changed. She looked at me longer. She smiled less. And when I offered to help mend a broken fence, she handed me the hammer and said, "You do it. I want to see how you work when I'm not watching." Her words felt like a test, and maybe like a warning. I knew she was falling for me, and I knew the deeper she fell, the higher the price of my lie. That night I stared at the deed in my bag. Her name wasn't on it, mine was. And if she ever saw it, this whole fragile, beautiful thing we were building would collapse in seconds. But still I didn't tell her, because I was a coward, a man who had conquered everything except the truth. And she was still out there brushing the horses in the moonlight, humming softly to herself, completely unaware that the man she was learning to trust was the one who already owned everything she loved. It started with a phone call. I had left my phone charging in the feed room, thinking no one would be around. But that day, Clara came in early. She heard it ring. She saw the name on the screen, and she answered. I was in the field when she found me. Her steps were quiet, too quiet. "You said your name was Jack," she said, her voice flat. "It is," I replied, turning to face her. "But not just Jack, is it?" She held up my phone. The screen still lit with a name I'd hoped she'd never see. "J. Whitmore Capital Holdings," she read aloud. "What exactly do you do for them?" I opened my mouth, closed it. My tongue felt heavy. "I own it," I said finally. "It's mine." She blinked, slow and hard. "You own what?" I took a breath. "This. All of this. The land. The farm. Everything." She didn't move, didn't speak. But I saw it. That flicker of something breaking behind her eyes. "You've known all this time?" she asked, barely a whisper. "I didn't come here to lie." "But you did lie," she snapped, stepping back. "You let me talk about saving this place, about fighting for it, while the whole time you were playing, what, rich man goes rustic? It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like, Jack. Because I've spent nights thinking maybe you were different. Maybe you saw me, maybe we—" She stopped. Her voice cracked. "I did see you," I said. "More than anyone ever has. Then why didn't you tell me the truth?" And there it was. The question I had no answer for. I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid that once you knew, whatever we had would disappear. She shook her head. "You didn't trust me." I didn't trust me. Silence. Deep. Final. She handed me the phone and walked away. That night she didn't sleep at the farm. I didn't know where she went. The animals were fed, the lights off. The house felt colder than the storm that came 2 weeks before. And I, the man who owned it all, sat in the dark, wishing I'd never signed those papers. Wishing I had met her another way. Wishing I had been just a man in her eyes, not a walking reminder of everything she hated. The next day her uncle showed up. He had heard something in town. Someone had recognized me. My photo in a magazine. My name attached to a bank. Word travels fast in small places, especially when it smells like scandal. "She won't talk to anyone," he told me. "She says she needs time." Time. The one thing I had wasted. I tried to write her a letter, then a second, then a third. None of them felt worthy of her. Because what do you say to a woman who gave you the only real peace you've ever known, and who now sees your face as a lie? One afternoon, I caught sight of her in the distance, walking through the wheat field, hair loose, steps slower. She didn't see me, or maybe she did and just didn't care. And that's when I knew I hadn't just broken her trust. I had broken the one thing she gave me without asking, her belief that something, or someone, could be different. That night, I packed my things, not because I wanted to leave, but because I didn't deserve to stay. I thought leaving would make it easier. I packed the few things I had in silence, left the keys on the table, didn't say goodbye to anyone. I figured if I vanished the way I arrived, quietly without explanation, maybe the damage I caused would fade with time. But the moment I stepped off that land, I knew I had left something behind I would never get back. Not the farm, not the deal. Her. I tried to return to the city. I tried to slip back into meetings, suits, restaurants, the noise of people who say all the right things but mean none of it. But it all felt dead. Because how do you go back to a life of polished glass after seeing someone feed chickens barefoot in the dirt and call it joy? Weeks passed, then months. And then, one night, just after midnight, I got a message from an unknown number. It was a photo, a rusted horseshoe nailed to a wooden post. Her barn. No words, just the image. I stared at it for an hour. The next morning I drove. No driver, no jet, just me. When I arrived at the farm, everything looked the same, except her. She stood near the fence, arms crossed, eyes tired. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said. "I didn't think I'd leave." We stood in silence, and then she said something I wasn't ready for. "I read your letter." I froze. "Which one?" "All of them." She stepped closer, still guarded. "I hated you," she said plainly. "For a while. Not because of what you did, but because of how much I missed what we had before I knew who you were." I swallowed hard. "I still don't know who I am when I'm not with you." Her eyes flickered, softer now. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Jack, but I also don't know how to forget you." The wind picked up. Leaves danced between us like the memory of something sacred. "I didn't come to ask for anything," I said. "I came to say you were the only part of my life that ever felt real." She looked down, and for the first time since that night in the feed room, she stepped forward, not into my arms, just close enough that I could see her tremble. "This land is still mine in my heart," she said. "But you stayed in it too, whether I wanted or not." "I'll never sign another paper again," I said. "Not if it costs me you." She almost smiled. Almost. Then she whispered, "If I let you back in, it won't be as a boss. I never wanted to be one." "Then what do you want to be?" I didn't hesitate. "Yours." And in that moment, for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, she didn't pull away. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. And that was more than I deserved. For a long moment, we just stood there. Not as landowner and farm girl, not as liar and betrayed, but as two people finally stripped of everything except what mattered. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Her fingers were calloused, warm, real, the kind that had touched the earth more times than she'd ever touched another person. She looked down at them, then up at me. "Come inside," she said quietly. It wasn't an invitation. It was a decision. Her boots echoed on the wooden floor. I followed, silent, heart pounding. We passed the kitchen, the hallway. She opened the door to the room at the back, the one that smelled like hay and morning sun. She turned, eyes locked on mine, and this time, no words came, because they weren't needed. Her hands went to the hem of her shirt, slow, uncertain. She wasn't seducing me. She was showing me trust. Skin that had never belonged to anyone before. A body made of strength, wildness, and something untouched by the world. I stepped toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Are you sure?" She nodded once. "I've never been more sure of anything." What happened next wasn't passion. It was surrender. We undressed each other without rush. Every scar on her shoulder, every freckle across her chest, every curve of her waist, I memorized it. Not because I had to, but because I knew I might never see anything so beautiful again. We laid down on the bed she'd slept in since childhood, and made love like time had stopped, like silence could speak, like forgiveness could take form between two bodies aching to be understood. Her mouth on my neck, my hands in her hair, our breaths tangled, rising, falling, crashing like waves on a shore neither of us wanted to leave. Afterward, she lay across me, tracing circles on my chest. "You know this doesn't mean everything's fixed," she said softly. "I know," I whispered, "but it means something. It means everything." She looked at me, serious, fragile, whole. "I still don't know what tomorrow looks like. Then let's just keep living today." And we did. We fed the horses side by side. We danced in the barn to an old radio. We talked about nothing, and sometimes, everything. I didn't ask her to promise anything, and she didn't ask me to stay, because some love isn't about holding on. It's about letting each other breathe, and choosing each day to return. That night, she fell asleep with her head on my chest, just like the first time. And before I closed my eyes, I whispered something into her hair that I didn't expect her to hear, but she did. I was never looking for someone to complete me. I was looking for someone to remind me I was never broken. She didn't move, just held me tighter. And in that silence I knew, maybe this wasn't forever, but it was real, and sometimes that's more than enough. Driua Kowi, if this story touched your heart, leave a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. And if you believe true love still exists, subscribe to Written Destiny Official. Here, every story has a soul.